record.
Hello, hello. It's May 25th on a Friday, and we have a very special Living A Course in Miracles call. We have Mr. Gary Renard himself, the author of The Lifetimes When Jesus and Buddha Knew Each Other, and he is on our call today. We're so excited. Thank you, Gary, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here with us and to sow some time into us and to help us continue to accelerate the process of waking up from this dream. And for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, on the replay, feel free to find us on Facebook. We're called Living A Course in Miracles Audio Book Club, and you can be part of these calls if you want to, or just be in our little private group. But the whole purpose of this group is to help everyone awaken from the dream faster, to have more wisdom, to have more fun, and to study A Course in Miracles in all the different ways that we can and be a great community. So we're going to start the call off like we start off every call, which is having each person just tell us your name, where you're calling in from, and why you're excited about today's call. So I'm Jared Krebs. I'm in San Antonio. I'm pumped because we got Gary, and we're going to talk about his book. Who wants to go next?
I'm Sheila Sear. I'm from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I'm excited to be here because Gary's on the call, and I'm hoping to meet you in Lethbridge in September.
Awesome. Who's next?
My name's Christian Stanbury. I'm from Calgary, just like Sheila, and I'm super excited as well because I might see you in Lethbridge too with Sheila, and yeah.
Way to go, Christian. All right, who's next?
I'm Langdon Tompkins. I'm in France, just about a week, but I'm really looking forward to talking to Gary about his book. It's mind-blowing, absolutely amazing. That's me, Doug.
Thank you, Langy. Calling in at 2 in the morning from France.
Wow.
All right.
Love it. We got a message from Susan Fleming. She says, I can't talk, I'm driving. All right, Susan, way to be on the call even when you're driving. Be safe, but awesome. All right, who's next?
I'm Viola Krebs, and I am from Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm super excited for the call because Gary's on, and the book that we've been reading. Excited to talk to Gary about it.
Yes, thank you, Mom. Great to see you. You look lovely.
Thank you.
I'm Shannon Shepard. I'm in Denver, Colorado, and I'm always excited to join and love and also just hear some insight from Gary.
Shannon, welcome to the call. First time caller.
Yeah, thanks, Jared.
Here.
Yeah, hi, this is Milna. I'm calling from France, so same here. Early hours.
2 in the morning, Milna, you woke up, you got on the call, so committed.
And I'm really
excited. You inspire me.
To share this call together with Gary, so yes.
Yes, awesome. Thank you, Milna. All right, who's next?
This is Pablo calling from Colombia, and excited to be here with you guys.
Thank you, Pablo. Good to see you as well. All right, who's next? Who do we have left?
Well, I'll go next.
Gary.
I'm Gary Renard, and I'm living in West Hollywood, California, right near Sunset Strip. And I'm really happy to be on the call tonight, and with such a diverse group of people. A couple of people from France. That's amazing. And I have friends in Calgary, and I've always enjoyed going there, and I'm looking forward to Lethbridge. But all of you, I'm just so happy to have you here, and I think we're going to have a good session. So I'm looking forward to it.
Heck yeah, we are pumped. Thank you, Gary. We have Lillian Schwartz and Linda Pettigrew. If y'all are able to chime in, great. If not, we'll just get started. Not sure if they're able to unmute themselves or show their webcam.
Hey, well, they're working on it. I'll chime in. This is Nathan Lively. I'm in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I'm excited to hear everybody's questions for Gary.
Thank you, Nathan. And you're excited to forgive us all as well, right? Like normal?
You got it. And you're the
Awesome.
first one.
And I'm the first one. Thanks for forgiving me. I wait for that. I wait for that every week.
Yeah, you're on pins and needles all week long, waiting for me to forgive you.
Is Nathan going to forgive me this Friday? Is what I think. But thank you, Nathan. All right, so let's get started with the call by just having Gary maybe just say a few words. Gary, we definitely, I guess when we started this with you, it was like, okay, we're going to read the book, and then we're going to do another call with you after like 3 months when we finish reading the book. We're going to tell you what we thought. And, you know, there's some people that are brand new on this call that also don't really even know all about you or this book. So maybe could you start with that, and then we can switch into other things as well. Linda Pettigrew, I see that you came to the call. Where are you calling in from?
Lancaster, California.
Awesome. Linda, welcome to the call.
You too. God bless. I'm originally from New York.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Linda. All right, so Gary, take it away, and then we'll open it up for questions. We have people that want to share. We'll have each person hopefully share like what they got from the book, and then if people have questions, and we'll just kind of go with the flow.
Well, sure. First of all, Linda, Lancaster is where Cindy and I found our kitty, Luna.
Aww.
Yeah, that's where we rescued her from. So there's a special
Kisses
place
to
in
the
our
kitty,
hearts.
okay?
Pardon?
Kisses to your cat, okay? Furry dad, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And my CPA.
Oh, Linda, can you go on mute, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. My fault.
It's okay. It's okay.
Oh, I could hear you. But yeah, that's a really nice place, and we like it very much, especially for that reason. And I'll talk a little bit about the book. There were a few things about it that struck me because, first of all, I didn't even know that there was going to be a fourth book. You know, I thought that maybe the first three would be it because it was a trilogy, and Arden and Persis seemed to complete their stories, you know, about being Thomas and Thaddeus 2,000 years ago, being Cindy and I today, being Arden and Persa 100 years from now in Chicago. And they seemed to put it all together. And I kind of assumed that that was the end of it. And then I was asking Arden and Persa, because I still, you know, channel them through my mind and I can talk to them. And I asked them a question because sometimes I would forget, you know, what to ask them. But I asked them, you know, I don't really understand, how did Jesus get to be Jesus? I mean, the Course teaches that he was a man. It says he was a man who saw the face of Christ in all his brothers and remembered God. So that tells us a lot. You know, it tells us that, you know, he wasn't born of a virgin birth. He was a man like everybody else. And he was human. And he had lessons to learn. But he saw the face of Christ in all his brothers without exception. And because of that, he remembered God. And that is probably also the closest thing that you're going to find to a formula as to how to awaken. You see the face of Christ in all your brothers, but remember, it's all your brothers, without exception. You know, you can't see the face of Christ in one brother and not another, or else it's not going to work because it's not whole. You know, it's not full, it's not complete. So you'll see that same thing in the lifetimes when Jesus and Buddha knew each other. As these lifetimes go on, you know, they start out as Shintos, Jesus and Buddha in various incarnations, and their friends, and you know, in China with Lao Tzu, and their romantic partners, and they're also Hindus, and they study with Plato, and Buddha becomes Buddha, although his name was Siddhartha, and Jesus eventually becomes Jesus. But the thing that you notice the most as you go along through these various incarnations is just how uncompromising they become as time goes on. You know, it's like every time they get more and more uncompromising and realizing that there's a truth that is a constant, and the truth doesn't change. You know, it's always a constant, it's always there. The truth is the truth, it doesn't shift or change. The truth was the truth 2,000 years ago, and it is today, and it will be 2,000 years from now. It does not alter. And then you have everything else that is illusion, that is in a constant state of shift and change, which means that it's not constant, that it's always moving around, it's always going in and out of balance, like the yin and the yang, or whatever you want to call it. But what it is duality. And it's always moving. So you got that which is moving, which is illusion, and you got that which is a constant, which is reality that doesn't shift or change. And as you go through the book, you see Jesus and Buddha in their various incarnations learning this and becoming more and more steadfast in, as the Course would put it, being vigilant only for God and his kingdom. Except they didn't call it God for a long time. It was reality or whatever it was that they wanted to call it. But they didn't identify it as being God. And that was kind of like a missing piece of the puzzle, because you really can't undo the idea of separation from God without acknowledging God. It wouldn't be possible. How can you undo the idea of separation from God when you're not even acknowledging God as the ultimate reality? So the place that had to go to eventually was, and you can see this at the end of the lifetime with Buddha, they have realized everything that they need to know, and they put the final piece of the puzzle together, and they realize that reality that they've been thinking of, that constant that has been there all along, is actually God, and that was the one thing that was missing. So by the time they get to the final lifetime, where Jesus is Jesus, and Buddha was there too, but he wasn't known as Buddha at that time. When they finally get there, they've realized that God is the ultimate reality, and that you have to completely acknowledge God as your creator and as the source of all being. Because even though you're exactly the same as God in heaven, the one distinction, if you could make a distinction in heaven, which you can't, but if you could, the one distinction would be that God created you and that you did not create God. Yes, that's about the only distinction you could come up with. And the rest is absolutely perfect oneness. So when you're in heaven, there is no experience of separation between you and God. But in order to get there, you have to undo the ego, and at the same time, completely undo this unconscious fear of God that people have, that they don't even know that they have, because it's totally unconscious. Yeah, you'll hear some about the fear of God, you'll see it in the Bible, but most of it's unconscious and people are not in touch with it. And what the Course does through forgiveness and undoing the ego is it allows you to undo the guilt that can be traced all the way back to the original idea of separation. And by undoing that, then along with it, you're undoing this fear of God that you didn't even know that you had. And you'll notice in the Course that the last two obstacles to peace are the fear of death and the fear of God. And those two things go hand in hand, because you wouldn't have one without the other. If you did not fear God on an unconscious level, then you would not fear death either, because it's really the fear of God that you have, and you just think that it's the fear of death. But that's symbolic, just like every other fear that people have is symbolic. And it's all symbolic of one real fear, which is the fear of God caused by this original idea of separation, which is the place that all guilt and pain and sorrow can be traced back to. So as Jesus and Buddha go on, they have these realizations that make them more and more uncompromising and make them realize that you can't compromise on the truth. You have to choose one thing or the other. You can't have them both. If God is real, nothing else is real. If the world is real, then God isn't real. You can't put the two together. So you have to choose. And they realized their power of choice, the power of decision, and they ended up using it. And if you use that power, then you're going to take the belief back that you have placed in the world of time and space, and you're going to put that belief where it belongs, which is with God and his kingdom. And wherever you put your belief, that is what is going to affect you. whatever you invest your belief in, then eventually that is what is going to affect you. And if you're investing your belief in the world and in the body, then that becomes your reality, and that is what affects you. But the power of the mind and the power of belief is so great that if you consistently invest your belief in God and his kingdom, then eventually that is what will come to affect you. So you're actually kind of like setting up an experience of reality for yourself. Is the world your reality, or is God your reality? And whichever one you choose will eventually be what you believe is real. And we have to be as uncompromising on that as Jesus and Buddha were if we want to be like them. So that was one of the things that really struck me about the fourth book. The other thing that really struck me about the fourth book was all the connections between all these people and all these various lifetimes. And I think one of the reasons Arden first did that for me was because I see the same thing going on today in my life. I see all kinds of connections with people that are mind-blowing that I never would have expected. And it has led me to realize that a lot of us who are here today, who know each other 2,000 years ago at the time of Jesus. A lot of us were together at that time. Of course, because of the nature of the mind, the mind is always splitting. And that's why you have over 7 billion people today, where, 2,000 years ago, at the time of Jesus, there was only about 1 million people in the whole world. And today you've got like 7 billion. So what happens is the mind keeps splitting and splitting. And whenever it does, it manifests as a new object or person in the projection, because the whole projection is based on separation, just like the mind is separating when it's splitting like that. And everything that we see is based on separation. And as a result of the mind splitting, what happens is that multiple people today will have the same memory of 2,000 years ago as the original being that appeared to be there at that time. Because as that person's mind keeps splitting and more people keep coming, those people are sharing the same memories, the same mind on a very deep unconscious level. So it's very possible that somebody will remember being like, St. Paul, 2,000 years ago. And today, you may find 20, 30 people in the world who have very clear memories of being St. Paul 2,000 years ago. And you may think, well, they can't all be St. Paul. Somebody's lying. But no, they're not, because they have legitimate memories of 2,000 years ago, because they're sharing that same split mind as the other ones. And they're having the same unconscious memories as those people. So it's kind of complicated, but at the same time, it's pretty simple if you think about it. People have the same memories. For example, I have a split in this lifetime, and he was also St. Thomas 2,000 years ago. And splits don't usually get to know each other, but sometimes they do. And he and I become friends. And he actually performed my wedding ceremony. So he became friends with Cindy and me, and we're all buddies. And he performed our wedding ceremony. And that's unusual. He's kind of like a Japanese version of myself. I kind of like look at him, and he's me in Japanese. So it's a lot of fun. And he's also a psychic, and he teaches spirituality. He doesn't teach A Course in Miracles, but he understands it, and he certainly believes in it. It's just that being a psychic, that's his gift. So that's what he teaches. He teaches people how to get more in touch with their psychic abilities, which is cool. But we're good friends, and we have a lot of fun together when we have a chance to get together. And he's a minister, and a very, very gifted and very funny guy, and also an author, of course. And we're a lot alike. But all these connections that I'm talking about, you could go back to the first lifetime that is covered in the lifetimes when Jesus and Buddha knew each other. And you see that as Shintos, Jesus and Buddha, they both fell in love with the same woman. And they both got interested in the same woman. And you could see where that could be a problem. That did create a forgiveness opportunity for them. Their names were Hiroshi and Saka at the time. And so they both fell in love with the same woman. And neither one of them ended up marrying her, even though they both wanted to, because back in those days, you were practically the property of the emperor or the emperor's family. So you had to do whatever you were told by the emperor's family. And this woman was told to marry somebody else. So right away, Hiroshi and Saka have this tremendous forgiveness opportunity with each other because they're both in love with the same woman. And then both of them have another very big forgiveness opportunity because neither one of them can have her because she's been ordered to marry somebody else. And I don't want to give away too much, but it does turn out very interestingly that woman in that lifetime, turns out in their final lifetime to be Mary Magdalene. So this woman ends up being Mary Magdalene in the final lifetime, and of course she ends up with Jesus in that lifetime. But that's just one example of the many, many connections that there are with the beings that are traveling throughout this book. And I see the same thing today in my life. I've met a lot of people who I know we've known each other before. I won't get into the story of Cindy and me, but that's also a fascinating story. I'll just start right at the beginning and go right to the end. But you may recall I tell the story of how I first went to Hollywood. And here I am out in the sticks in Maine, where there's more deer than people, and way in the uppermost northeastern part of the United States. And the book comes out, and a couple of years later, I'm visiting Hollywood, all the way across the country, for the first time. And I'm staying on Sunset Strip, and I go out for a walk, and I'm just looking around. I don't know my way around. I'm starstruck. I've been a movie fan my whole life. And I decided to go into a mall, and there's this record store. And that's where I saw Cindy for the first time, but I didn't know her name. I didn't know who she was. I didn't talk to her. I was too shy. But I saw her face, and I would never forget her face. It was like imprinted in my mind. I would never forget it. And she walked away, and I figured I'd never see her again. So 2 years later, I'm speaking. This is in Las Vegas. I'm giving a presentation at a conference that my publisher Hay House was holding in Las Vegas. And a woman comes up, and she seemed very nice, and I had kind of like a feeling like I knew her, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Well, that was Cindy's mom. And I owe a lot to Cindy's mom because it was Cindy's mom who introduced Cindy and her sister Jackie to A Course in Miracles. And it was Cindy's mom who first got The Disappearance of the Universe and introduced Cindy to my books. And it was Cindy's mom's idea to take Cindy to come and hear me speak. So I had a pleasant conversation with this woman. Then the next person comes up and it's like, oh my God. And everything came to me all at once, like kind of like a spiritual download. And I knew everything all at once. I knew who that person was 2,000 years ago. I knew who she was going to be in this lifetime. I knew who she was going to be 100 years from now in Chicago. And I also knew that she was the woman who I had seen 2 years before in that record store on Sunset Boulevard. And everything came to me all at once. And I knew I couldn't let her get away again because I might never see her again. So, I talked her into letting me send her a message through her website because she told me she was a musician because she knew that I was a musician. And we stayed in contact ever since then. And I was still living in Maine. And to make a long story short, the first time I saw her was about 14 years ago. Today, we live right around the corner from that record store where I first saw Cindy. If you told me 15 years ago that something like that would happen, not only would I not have believed you, I would have thought you were crazy. But all these connections just kept happening. Like I would go to Hawaii, I would meet a couple of friends, make a couple of friends there. Then it turns out that they live in the next town from Cindy. And we all get together all the time now. And Cindy's sister, Jackie, has become a teacher of the course, and all these people in the area. We start to get to know each other, and we realize all these connections that we've had. And it reminds me of all these connections that are in the book. I just call it lifetimes for short. But you notice that with A Course in Miracles people, and also spirituality in general, all these connections that we have, because as Art and Persa explain it, we're kind of like in each other's orbit. And yeah, we may appear to go apart, but we always come back together again because we're in each other's orbit. So if you've known somebody in the past, you'll probably know them again. Emerson put it very well. He said, if we are related, we shall meet. And he doesn't mean necessarily blood related. He means if we are related in terms of our relationships from other times, then we shall meet. And as the Course in Miracles says, the script is written, there are no accidents in salvation. Those who are to meet shall meet, because together they have the potential for a holy relationship. So those of us who do not quite yet have holy relationships with each other, this is an opportunity for us to have a holy relationship. And the holy relationship isn't as complicated as people think. There's a very simple sentence in the Course. It says, the holy relationship is the forgiven relationship. And if you have really completely forgiven someone, that's a holy relationship. And they don't have to agree with you at the time. They will eventually. And that's why the arc is entered 2 by 2, because eventually they're going to forgive everybody too. But you don't necessarily have to wait for them. You don't have to have their agreement. What's important is that you forgive them completely in your mind, so that any time that you think of them, you're at peace. In fact, that's how you'll know that you've really forgiven somebody. If thinking of them doesn't bother you, if it has no effect on you, because that's what the Course says about the Course's brand of forgiveness. It says it denies the ability of anything not of God to affect you. So if someone is affecting you, if they're making you feel uncomfortable, even a little bit annoyed, then you haven't completely forgiven them. But if they can come into your presence or into your mind in the form of a memory, which is just an image, which is all we're seeing anyway, is images. And if it doesn't bother you, somebody who you didn't like before comes into the room and they have no effect on you. They used to like push your buttons, but now they don't, and they don't bother you. That's how you'll know that you've forgiven them. So for me, some politician comes on the TV screen who I can't stand, and maybe he used to push my buttons a little bit, but now he comes on the TV screen and he has no effect on me, and he doesn't bother me, and I'm peaceful. I know that I have forgiven him. And you have a bad memory, but it doesn't affect you. A lot of Course students, they think that if you've really forgiven it, you should never think of it again. But that's not true, because the ego is relentless, and the ego will keep trying to trick you. And it'll keep bringing it up again, hoping that you will react and that you won't be peaceful. So your job is simply to be peaceful and to realize, well, actually, I know that I've forgiven that because I am peaceful. And that kind of perseverance is required in order to do this. But if you've really forgiven it, it won't bother you. And that's how you'll know. And nowadays, I'm actually having a hard time finding things to bother me. So I have to kind of like go looking for them, because I don't feel like I'm being activated very much. And I certainly don't feel like I have anything to forgive with Cindy. But that's easy, because Cindy is the most positive person I've ever met in my life. I mean, I've known her for 11 years. I don't think that I have ever heard a negative sentence come out of her mouth in 11 years. I mean, she is just the most positive person in the world. And I feel very lucky in that respect because, I was the kind of guy, like I could, be kind of a smart ass and say maybe not always the kindest things in the world. And it's taken me a long time to get over that because that was kind of like how I defended myself. you know, because I was actually a very shy, actually painfully shy person. And the way that I would take care of that and defend myself would be to make these smart ass comments. In fact, you can see it in my books, especially the first couple of books. And that was my way of handling the fact that I was nervous when Art and Persa showed up. So I would kind of like, you know, give them this smart ass attitude. But that was the defense. And I don't really need it. And if I use it nowadays, it's strictly out of humor, you know, because I still believe in humor. You know, it's like, I don't want to be like what the Course says, you know, the Son of God remembered not to laugh. I want to remember to laugh. And it's okay to crack jokes, just as long as there's no malice behind it. You don't want to have any anger or any malice behind your jokes. And I don't. I just like to be funny. And I think that if something isn't funny at least once in a while, then to me, it's boring. And to me, most spiritual books are boring. You know, so I like to, you know, lighten up a little bit from time to time. But I think now, having done the fourth book, that it was very clear that there was going to be a fifth book. So I'm already working on that. And I don't know, I kind of have a feeling that that will be the last one, you know, because of the title. It's really about going all the way home to God. You know, it's about finishing the job, so to speak, and going all the way home. So that's really the title and the purpose of the book. And I'm actually excited about that. And, you know, it's one of those books, I've gotten to the point where I don't really care if anybody reads it. You know, it's just, I want it to be there, you know, in case anybody wants it, in case anybody wants to go that extra mile and go all the way home. And that's exciting to me. And I think that the time is going to come in a few years where, now I'll probably be living in Hawaii. I expect to be here in California a few more years. I don't know, 3 years, 5 years, whatever. But eventually when I'm living in Hawaii, I think that I'll probably do a retreat in Hawaii, maybe once every quarter, maybe 4 times a year, one for spring, summer, winter, and fall. And people can come to us. And we'll also do teaching online. In fact, within the next few months, Cindy and I are going to start teaching classes online. And I think that we'll do that from Hawaii. But aside from that, I don't see us traveling very much. And then I'll get into a whole new phase of studying the Course. Because when I was doing Disappearance of the Universe, my first book, that took 10 years. And during that whole 10 years, I was like immersed in studying the Course. In fact, I did it kind of like the way that Cindy does it now. I've never seen anybody read the Course as much as Cindy. It's like she's always reading the Course and she's always talking about it. Sometimes I have to say, Cindy, please give me a break. Okay, can I like watch this football game and drink this beer, and because she's always into it. And that's the way that I was the first 10 years that I did the Course. And yes, of course, I've always continued to study it, but I haven't had as much time as I did that first 10 years. And I can see going back to that in a few years where I'll actually dedicate most of my time to a whole new study of the Course in Miracles and do the whole thing all over again, the text and the workbook and the manual for teachers, and study more even than I used to with Ken, and just get into it even deeper. Because, I feel like I've gone through many phases with the Course, but I want to do it again and just make sure that I've forgiven everything. I want to make sure that there's nothing coming up in my mind that I haven't forgiven. And of course, just when you think that you have forgiven everything, very often something will happen. That's what happened to Buddha at the end of his life. He thought that he had forgiven everything, and then he finds out that he has a son. And he didn't even know that he had a son. And then all of a sudden, there's a whole new huge forgiveness lesson for him because he becomes obsessed with finding his son. And his son has become obsessed with finding him. And so that turned out to be a huge forgiveness lesson for both of them. And I'll let the book tell you the rest of what happens. But sometimes just when you think you've got it and you've forgiven everything, something will happen. And there's a whole new set of forgiveness opportunities for you that arise from that one forgiveness opportunity. So I must say that to discourage you, because that is indeed an opportunity. And if you can learn to see it as an opportunity, then you have progressed light years in your spiritual advancement, because you know, okay, I can forgive that. I have the tools. I know how to do it. I know that I'm capable of doing it, and I'm determined to do it because I want to go home. I want to make this the final lifetime that I live. And I'm determined to do that, especially since, if you've read the fourth book, you see that Hart and Persa tell me pretty late in the book that it would be possible for me to complete all of my forgiveness lessons in this lifetime and to not have to review that final lifetime again mentally. Up until then, I assumed that I was going to come back and live that final lifetime in Chicago 100 years from now. But then I thought to ask them, would it be possible for me to complete all my lessons in this lifetime? And they were like, man, we thought you'd never ask, yes, it would be possible for you to complete all of your forgiveness lessons in this lifetime. And so that was encouraging. And that makes me even more determined. And, I feel like I can do it. I've been blessed with good health in this lifetime. I haven't had any serious problems with my health. And I know that most of us course students of this generation are going to live to be into our 90s, probably. And, we've got time to complete the job in this lifetime. And it can be done in just half a lifetime. You look at people like Ken Wapnick and Bill Thetford. Bill didn't have the course until he was a little older. But I think, in just, 20, 30 years, it's possible to complete the job and learn all of your forgiveness lessons. And I think it really is proportionate to how much you want it, how badly you want the result. You have to want it badly, or else you won't work hard enough. You won't do your forgiveness lessons and work hard enough at it in order.
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, I love how you kind of gave a synopsis of the book at the beginning of this call, and it just kind of jogged my memory of everything. And I also want to acknowledge your social media or your Zoom game. You got your camera all perfect. You're looking right into the camera. You got good lighting. I'm like, man, Gary, your game is just going up. So, but I just wanted, I know everyone on this call wants to share like what they got from the book. We have really only about 15, 20 minutes. I mean, more on the call. So with the people on, we have about 2 minutes per person, maybe even with a timer, just to kind of let everyone share. We could also open it up for questions as well. But I guess, how do you think we should proceed from here with our time?
I think what you said is a good idea. And, if we go a few minutes over, 15 minutes over, don't worry about it.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's do 2 minutes each then. And then I know that some of you have questions as well. So if maybe after that, we can go into a bit of Q&A. But I'll just start. I'm gonna be the timer person. So let me get the timer. And I'm gonna just start by sharing. Timer is going. I'm gonna be sharing, first of all, Gary, my big takeaways from the book was that I got to see how I could be enlightened this lifetime too. If you can do it, I can do it. And like, just to even know that pumps me up. And it just makes my desire even higher to like read my Ken Wapnick and to like forgive when I get the opportunities to forgive. And that's what I got from the book. And if that's what the book intention was, then it nailed it with me. And I know everyone on the call feels the same way. I mean, you won't find more committed people than on this call, people who want to wake up from the dream and study this process and forgive as much as possible. So that's what I wanted to share with you. That was my biggest takeaways. And there's obviously so much meat in the book, but that was kind of the big overall theme for me.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I just want to mention that it's great to be excited, and you should be. You want to have that motivation. And you can't expect to be excited all the time. You know, sometimes people get discouraged because it is a process. So what happens is we go through a lot of different phases with the course, and not all of them are always pleasant. Like the Manual for Teachers talks about a period of unsettling, and you see in the Bridge to the Real World that, you know, the rug is being kind of like pulled out from underneath you because the whole foundation that held your world together is being questioned. So, you know, you're going to go through different phases. So I liken it to kind of like a roller coaster ride. You know, sometimes you're going to be down. And when you're down at the bottom, you got to remember that it's like a roller coaster ride, because just as you're at the bottom, guess what's going to happen? You're going to start to go up again. And you always do. So when you're down, remember that you're going to go up.
Awesome. Thank you. That was the 2 minutes. Beautiful. Hey, I like this whole, maybe each person shares a minute and then pops in a question, and then Gary comes back with his minute response. And that way we'll get through it. What do y'all think? Who's next?
All right. I'll go.
Oh, wait.
next.
I'm sorry. Milna's next. I promised Milna. I promised her. Sorry, Christian. You're after Milna. Sorry, bro. Milna, do you want to do a minute and then Gary a minute?
Yeah, I'm going to be really quick.
Okay.
Actually, I share your idea or your response, Jared, about being really motivated to forgive as much as possible this time of my life, or this lifetime, and hopefully be enlightened this lifetime. So that's what I got out of the book too. I actually have a question for you, Gary. It has to do with the Course in Miracles, and I'm wondering, has it only been channeled to Helen Schuckman here on planet Earth, or has it been channeled to other beings on other planets in other universes?
Wow, that's a very interesting question. Now, the truth of the Course in Miracles has been channeled to other beings, but not in the exact same form as the Course in Miracles. The Course is unique to human beings. And there are other beings throughout the universe who are humanoid, but they're not human. And so they've been given the same truth by the Holy Spirit, but in a form that they can recognize and accept and understand without fear. So it's not exactly the same form, but the content is the same. And it's the content that matters. It's the meaning that matters. And the fact that the form isn't exactly the same doesn't matter. So the truth, yes, is eventually given to everyone. The Holy Spirit communicates with everybody and every living being, even animals, but communicates with them in their language, in a way that they can accept and understand. With animals, it's pictures, it's not words. With other beings, it's their particular kind of language. I might refer you to a great movie called Arrival, and the alien beings in that movie speak a totally different kind of language than we do. But the Holy Spirit would communicate with them in their language in a way that they could accept and understand.
Okay, thanks. Great.
Awesome. Thank you, Milna. Thank you, Gary. All right, Christian, 2 minutes. It's yours.
All right. So, hey, Gary, good to see you again, buddy.
You too.
So, thanks. So you asked, how did Buddha get to be Buddha? How did Jesus get to be Jesus? And when I was a kid, I asked, how did Mother Teresa get to be Mother Teresa? And basically, it's the same thing. That undivided goal, that one single purpose, uncompromising. So that's the message that I get from your book, and that's the same message I got from Mother Teresa. And yeah, I'm really excited about that. My question If it's appropriate and if it's okay, but I was kind of wondering maybe like about a past life with me and my sister. I appreciate that she took me to the hospital today. I had surgery, so I'm pretty drowsy, but I got back home today, and I appreciate her. So I was maybe wondering if it's possible to ask about that, if it's appropriate.
Sure. One thing about Mother Teresa and everybody else who becomes enlightened, you notice that Jesus says in the Course, eventually I just listened to one voice. So eventually they just listened to the Holy Spirit. It's like both the Course and Mary Baker Eddy said, all are called, but few choose to listen. Well, they chose to listen, and eventually they just listened to one voice. And of course, the more you undo the ego, the easier that becomes. As far as you and your sister are concerned, siblings in this lifetime, I can guarantee you that they have definitely been together, not just once or twice in the past, but many times in the past. Members of your immediate family are among your most important forgiveness lessons. Now, sometimes you don't have a forgiveness lesson with a particular member of your family, but you do with somebody else. And the thing is, yes, you and your sister have been together many times before. One lifetime quickly that comes to mind is that you were together about 3,000 years ago in ancient Egypt. And at that time, you weren't brother and sister, you had a romantic relationship. And we all have many different kinds of relationships. Like in one lifetime, somebody will be the father, somebody will be the son, somebody will be the mother, somebody will be the daughter, somebody will be the sibling. You have all these different things going on. But ultimately, there's some kind of a forgiveness lesson that needs to be learned. Now, maybe you don't feel like you have anything to forgive with your sister. It sounds like she's helping you a great deal in this lifetime, which is wonderful. But you never know. Something could come up in the future. And if it does, at least you know what it's for. At least you know that everything is for forgiveness. And if there's nothing to forgive, then what you should do is celebrate and have a good time. So one of the two, whichever is called for, that's what you should do.
Sounds amazing. Thank you very much, buddy.
Sure.
Awesome. All right. Who's next?
Me.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to, what I got out of the book is I appreciated the stories of Jesus and Buddha. I thought those were interesting, but more interest to me was not the stories, because I just sort of see them as more unreal stories happening here on, Psycho Planet. It was the principles of the Course that really came through to me. And what I kept seeing is they just knew it wasn't real. They just knew it wasn't real. They just knew it wasn't real. And I've heard some Course teachers say, well, you can't just go into denial. You don't want to be a bliss ninny. I find often in my life, something will happen and I start to get tweaked and I think, hey, wait a minute. I don't have to be upset by this. Why would I be upset by that? There's nothing going on here. And I practice, like I'm the one who created it. I can make another choice. And it seems like it doesn't, like it's not that important. And I'm wondering, am I missing a step? Am I skipping a step, or am I doing it?
Yeah, I think that what's happening is something that happens with most Course students. It's not enough, and you can see that Jesus and Buddha learned this along the way. It's not enough just to think that the world is an illusion and that don't make it real, don't make it real. That's not enough. You have to replace that with something. That's why the Course is more proactive than people realize. You have to say, okay, it's not real, but then you have to replace it with reality. And the reality is this perfect spirit that is exactly the same as God. Because when you do that, you're sending a message to your own mind that that's what you are. If you're just saying it's not real and it's just an illusion, you're kind of like telling yourself that you're not real and that you're just an illusion. And that will leave you feeling kind of like empty and meaningless. So that's why you have to go all the way with it. You have to actually be proactive and replace that and be vigilant only for God and his kingdom. And think of these people who you're forgiving as being this perfect spirit that is exactly the same as God. And it's because of that law of the mind that the Course articulates. It says, as you see him, you will see yourself. So you want to think of that person as being not a body. You kind of want to overlook the body and think of that person as being exactly the same as God, which is not part of it, but all of it. And if you do, then that is how you will come to think of yourself. And that is how Jesus and Mary got in touch with their divinity, was by seeing it everywhere without exception.
Thank you.
Woo! On fire. Call's on fire. All right, mom and dad.
Okay. I have kind of the same take on the book, because it was a book of possibility, the possibility to undo the ego, the possibility for me to be able to do it in this lifetime and do all the forgiveness lessons. So that was a book of possibility. What really blew my mind was when Gary talked about the split mind, and how in this lifetime there's someone with the split mind that's the same person as him. And that is just really mind-blowing. I hadn't heard that one before. And so I just wonder, like, I could be eating lunch with a friend, and I mean, we're all the same mind, but how do you say, you know, you're the one person that was me, or how do you know?
Yeah, well, for me, it's kind of like an intuition. I happen to have a thing where when I go to bed at night sometimes, or even when I wake up in the morning, I have this thing, I call it the in-between zone. And I actually have visions, and I see scenes from past lifetimes, even with sound sometimes. And so that just happens to be a gift of mine. My metaphysical experiences have often been very visual. You know, that's just the way that I am. With other people, it may be more audible. But I think in your case, it'll be an intuition. You'll just know. And you don't have to necessarily know. What's important is what you do with any forgiveness opportunities that come up in this lifetime, which is why in my second book, Art and Cursa, they had this chapter. It was called It's This Lifetime, Stupid. And what they meant was, no matter how many memories you have of other lifetimes, yes, they can be constructive if you realize that you're getting forgiveness lessons that are the same in this lifetime as what you had before, which is true. But the main thing is that you practice forgiveness. You don't necessarily have to get in touch with who that person was at another place in time. And as you go on and continue to undo the ego, well, you may find that you have more memories of who that person was in past lifetimes. There's a part in the manual for teachers where Jesus says, pardon?
Can there be more than one person
Oh, yeah, sure.
in the same lifetime?
What do you mean, more than?
One person that's the same person as you, like maybe 2 or 3 people, maybe 4, walking around this planet?
3 or 4 of what?
The same person?
Oh, you mean the same person as who that person was a long time ago?
Yeah.
Right, that would involve the splits that I was talking about. So I've even met a couple who were the same person as me 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
And I'm sure that's true of everybody on the call here. There are people who were the same person that you were, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, and you may even bump into them without realizing it. But maybe you'll recognize each other. It's not the same for everybody. The truth is simple, but the ego is complicated. That's why you have what looks like 7 billion people out there. The ego wouldn't have it any other way. But the truth is, there's just one of us. And that's what we want to get to. We kind of want to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, and kind of like undo the separation and realize that ultimately there's really just one of us. There's just this one ego appearing as many that thinks that it's here. And what we want to do is overlook separation and overlook the body. And yes, we can learn from the past and we can forgive the present. But at some point, forgiveness comes down to overlooking bodies and people's mistakes and thinking of them as being this glorious innocent, perfect being that is actually oneness with God.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's go to the next person who wants to go next. We have Linda, Langy, Nathan, Shannon.
Right. Nobody has to speak if they don't want to.
Yeah, you don't have to if you don't want to. That's true.
It's kind of like a rule in my workshop. I'll tell you why. Back when I was doing EST in the 1980s, I didn't want to talk to anybody. You know, so when the break came, there was a 15-minute break, and I engineered.
Linda, can you go on mute? Can you go on mute, Linda?
When the break came during the seminar, I would engineer the whole 15 minutes so that I didn't have to talk to anybody. And I would go to the back of the room, I'd get a very important cup of water. That took a couple of minutes. Then I go to the restroom. That took a few minutes. I'd hide out in one of the stalls. And then I'd go to the lobby of the hotel and hang around and lurk around for a while. And I set up the whole thing so that I got back to my seat just in time for the break to be over so that I didn't have to talk to anybody. You know, so if somebody doesn't want to talk at any of my workshops, I honor that completely. And nobody has to say anything at my workshops because I was the same way. And you wouldn't think that today, by the way. That shows you how much things can change in one lifetime. So, you know, if you're somebody who doesn't like to talk to people or talk in front of people, I don't blame you because I used to be exactly the same way. And I understand completely. So, you know, on that note, I would say be prepared because as you do the course and as you undo the ego, you never know what's going to happen. You never know where forgiveness will lead you. You never know what great thing could be just around the corner that you don't know about. And I'm not going to promise you that if you do the course that everything is going to go good. Nobody can promise you that. You know, I like to joke, you look at Jesus at the end of his life, things weren't exactly going good. The point is, it didn't matter because he had completely undone his ego, which means that by definition, he had learned all of his forgiveness lessons and his mind had been completely healed by the Holy Spirit. And once your mind is completely healed by the Holy Spirit, the Course says that the guiltless mind cannot suffer, and you will eventually get to the point where you cannot suffer. You will be like Jesus. You know, he guarantees you that in the Course. There's nothing special about him. He says that we are equal except in time, and time does not exist. So he's very clear about that, and he doesn't present himself as being special. He told Helen Schuckman that she was not special. You know, and I would think that if anybody was special, it would be the scribe of the Course in Miracles. But Jesus even says to Helen right in the Course, you are not special. And that's why I know that I'm not special. And other teachers and students of the Course are not special. We're just doing what eventually will come naturally to everybody, which is to awaken and go home to God.
Love it.
I just want to express something that I've said to Gary, but I want to say it again. It is express my deep gratitude, not only for the last book, but for all of them. That's how I got initiated into A Course in Miracles. I was sleeping deeply until the first time that I read The Disappearance of the Universe. And it's just the amazing way in which the truth is presented in all the books, and the richness of all of them, and the tremendous number of layers that there are to really understand that truth in a deeper and deeper way as you read them. It's amazing. And one of the things that has been most important for me with those books have been how they have served to keep my motivation at an ultimate high all the time. Because as Gary and some of you said in the beginning of the call, you know, motivation may you know, get weak at a certain point, but to me what those books have always done, and since I read them from the first time, I've continued to read them as I've done the course, and and they've just kept that motivation, because I don't know. I guess our processes are all different, right, from one another. But to me, when I read the words in those books, they hit me in a very, very deep way, and it just gets that motivation very, very high. So I just wanted to express that to you, Gary. Like I said, I was sleeping very deeply until I read them, and I guess the whole thing was turned right side up, I guess. Or it started to get turned right side up when I started reading them. So anyway, thanks so much for that, because at the end of the day, I know we're all, there's just one of us, but we're all symbols to each other, and I'm deeply grateful for that.
Well, thank you, Pablo. I really appreciate that. I do, and you're a good friend, and I appreciate your friendship. And you kind of remind me of something that I've noticed the last few years. I always felt a certain amount of love from readers and from the course community. And Cindy has noticed this too, the last 2 or 3 years especially. There is this tremendous amount of love that is coming our way, and I'm feeling it more and more. And I know it's partly me and my perception, but we've just noticed that there's a lot of love, and there seems to be a general healing going on in the course community, and it's fun to see, because I think that just like all of us go through a certain series of phases, I think the course community also has gone through a certain series of phases. And I see kind of like peace breaking out all over the place in the course community. And I've just been feeling an awful lot of love. It's almost been overwhelming lately. And I really do appreciate it. And I appreciate you and the friendship of everybody here. And it means a great deal to both Cindy and I. And we always love seeing you when you come to a workshop. So we'll look forward to seeing you again. But thank you very much for saying that. It really does mean a lot to me.
Thank you.
All right, we have time for 2 more questions, 2 more 2-minute segments. Anyone want them?
Hey, I'll jump in.
Nathan.
Hey, I was waiting because I've reviewed all my notes from the book and I didn't come up with any question, but I just thought I'd share, since it meant so much to me. I read this section several times, and this sentence kept coming out of me: you don't have to be the hero of the dream. And so every time I read that, I was like, just like, there's some sort of deep sigh of relief coming out. And I think I've had a lot of just pain around making decisions and how to decide what to do in my life. And so reading this section, don't worry about the future, you don't have to be the hero of the dream, I've been thinking about that pretty often for the last couple of months.
That's good. That's very good. It kind of reminds me of Buddha's middle way. You don't have to be the hero of the dream. You don't have to go to extremes. You don't have to be rich. You don't have to be poor. I mean, it's okay if you end up being rich. It's okay if you end up being poor. It doesn't matter. The point is, you don't have to be. You don't have to strive to be a hero. You don't have to strive to be anything special or important. All that you have to do is be normal. And I always got a kick out of it when Ken Wapnick would say that. Don't forget how to be normal. And that's all you got to do. And then all that you're doing with the course is that you're looking at it differently. Now you're like above the battleground, and it's the same movie. You're looking at the same movie. The only difference is you have a different interpretation of the movie, because now you've taken on the Holy Spirit's interpretation of it instead of the ego. And yeah, it looks like the same movie, but the experience is totally different. And it's peaceful, and it's more enjoyable, and it's a better way of life. It really is.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you, Nathan.
Perfect timing. Linda Pettigrew had a question.
Linda.
Okay.
All right, you got 2 minutes, Linda.
Okay, thank you. I guess we'll talk about the Jesus and Buddha book. Is there somewhere in there that talks about forgiveness, how you can do it? I guess I'll have to Google how to look for forgiveness in the Course in Miracles book, too.
Yeah, actually, in all 4 of the books, there's some kind of a forgiveness exercise for you to do. You'll notice that they get a little bit shorter as the books go on, because as time goes on, you don't have to think about it as much. At first, you have to
Right.
think about it. You have to learn it in order
Yeah,
to do
that's
it.
the hard part.
Yeah, but the more you practice, the less you have to think about it, and the more it becomes almost automatic. You just do it naturally and quickly. So that's kind of like a process that you see in the books. But in all 4 books, it does explain how to practice forgiveness, what the steps are, how to go about it. But I was talking with Jared and his family about this yesterday. Eventually, it becomes like an attitude. It becomes a way of being, kind of like the Zen concept of you just know the truth, and it becomes incorporated into what the Course calls a state of miracle readiness, which you see right in those first 50 miracles principles. And miracles are habits and should be involuntary. Well, that's a very advanced state, even though you see it in those first 50 principles. A lot of those first 50 principles are the most advanced ideas in the Course, being given to you right at the beginning, and you don't know what they mean at first. You can't possibly know what they mean at first, but you learn as time goes on. So, yeah, the answer is that it is explained in all the books. And the one I would start with would be the one in the Disappearance of the Universe. It's on page 256 in the Disappearance of the Universe. And it gives you a very specific forgiveness thought process and the steps and how to go about it.
Okay, hopefully I can remember that. Thanks.
Yeah, you'll see.
It's all recorded, Linda. We will remember it for you too.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks.
All right,
God bless. Keep it
thanks,
simple,
Linda.
huh?
Last 2 minutes goes to Langy. Langy, do you want to ask a question, my man? Oh, Linda, please hit mute. Linda, please hit mute. Okay.
Sorry about that. What was I going to say? Yeah, fantastic book.
Thank you.
Non-duality, uncompromising non-duality. I had a big thing about that reading the book. I had to read it like 3 times, especially the bit about Siddhartha and Rahula. Well, Siddhartha's basically got it sussed, and then his son turns up, and he's back almost to square one. And I thought, the ego's so cunning. You're practically there. And of course, all the other meetings, they all went off. Most of the wise people, as you said, there's always that one bit missing, and it's this uncompromising non-dualism. And I think that is the message of the book, really. It certainly was for me, anyway. And I just want to say something. I've been doing the workbook again, and there was a bit in one of the lessons the other day, and it basically said that it might not have been a lesson, but anyway, it was in the book. If you start the Course in Miracles, if you've made the commitment to do it, there's a promise that we all manage it. We will find the truth. It doesn't say when, but we're all going to get there. The fact that we've actually made the commitment to do it, just as to cheer everybody up if they think they're having a bad time with the Course at the moment. But yeah, an amazing book, Gary. Thank you for writing it, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And you notice even in the spiritual community, so-called spiritual community, it's not always very cool to talk about God, and it's definitely not cool to talk about Jesus. And the whole thing is, if people have a problem with those concepts, then I think they have to realize that there's something that they need to forgive. Because, as I was saying earlier, you're not going to undo the idea of separation from God without acknowledging God. So you notice, like late in the workbook of the Course in Miracles, they involve an actual approach to God. In fact, at one point, Jesus even has you call out to God. God. It's like this fear of God that people didn't even know that they had is being undone, and they're actually approaching God, and they're losing that fear, and they're getting to the point where they're going to become one with God and totally acknowledge their perfect oneness with God. And that is pure non-dualism. When you get to the point where you totally acknowledge God as the only reality and realize that the truth is true and nothing else is true. And that is an uncompromising approach. And it doesn't come overnight, but I think that the fact that all of us are here together is very strong evidence that this is our time to be doing that, or at least sometime in this lifetime. And it's that joining with God in perfect oneness that is the experience of pure non-dualism. And that is the experience that the Course is directed toward. And it's something that is inevitable, but we can hasten it with our forgiveness and with our commitment to it.
Awesome.
By the way, I love France, and I want to come back.
All right. So this does it for the call. We did have one question that Milna typed in. Gary, if you can answer this maybe in a quick one. Magnesium and potassium for high blood pressure. Art and Persa talk about that. Does anyone know which type of magnesium and potassium to use?
Well, you don't want to get the magnesium and potassium at a place like GNC because a lot of their stuff is synthetic. So I get mine at Whole Foods. And I don't know if you have a Whole Foods in your area, but their products tend to be more pure. And they have one that just says 365 days on it. But it's very high quality stuff at Whole Foods. And that's the best that I've found. I would stay away from GNC in places where they may be using synthetic things. And yeah, you take 3 potassiums, and they usually come in 99 milligram sizes. And you take maybe 200 milligrams pills of magnesium. And I think my blood pressure was like 156 over 95 or something. It's pretty bad. And today it's more like 128, over 82. And that's just from taking potassium and magnesium. And there are natural cures for just about anything. I will call it a cure because the Course says only salvation can be said to cure.
Is it magnesium chloride or magnesium sulfate? Do you know?
Oh, it's just plain magnesium. And that's all it'll say on the...
just plain, okay.
On the bottle.
Awesome.
And it's like, I do believe that for every disease and for every sickness, there is a corresponding treatment that can heal it. Even though it's magic and it's temporary, it does work and it helps. Anything that's helpful is good for people, as long as we remember that the ultimate cure is the mind, because only salvation can be said to cure, and you're undoing that sense of separation from God. That's the real cure. But maybe along the way, how do you know that the Holy Spirit isn't guiding you to do things that are helpful to you and that can make you feel better, and that in turn can help you to think more clearly and to do the Course better and to undo the ego more quickly. So whatever you do, don't do it alone. Do it with the Holy Spirit. But you may find yourself being guided to things that can be helpful.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Any final words from you or Arten and Persa to end the call?
Well, since we've been talking about Jesus and Buddha, I would want to emulate them. One of the things that the book did for me was it made me want to be like them. It made me want to be as uncompromising as they are, because I realized that accelerates the whole process. Now, I've mentioned a couple of times, be vigilant only for God and His kingdom. But that's something that is easier said than done. It's a pretty tall order. And in order to be vigilant for God and His kingdom, you have to be willing to overlook people's errors instead of making them real. I love that line, and I quote it often from the Course, that the alertness of the ego to the errors of other egos is not the kind of vigilance the Holy Spirit would have you maintain. The Course is asking you not to be vigilant to the errors of others. it's asking you to overlook the errors of others. And by not making them real, forgive them. And by forgiving them in that person, you're forgiving the same thing in yourself. The Course even wants therapists to do the same thing. You look in the psychotherapy section. It says that the job of the therapist is to forgive everything in the patient that he has not yet forgiven in himself. So even when you're doing therapy on somebody, the Course is saying that you should be practicing forgiveness if you're a teacher of God. So the book made me want to be as uncompromising as Jesus and Buddha, and to realize what everything is for. And don't forget that you're not always going to have to forgive. There are going to be times when you're having a good time, and it's okay to have a good time. And if there's nothing to forgive, don't go looking for things. You know, they're going to show up eventually anyway. So when you're having a good time, enjoy it. And don't forget that this is a happy dream. It's a happy form of spirituality, and it's okay to enjoy it. And, you know, I've been having a good time, and, you know, I'm enjoying living in Hollywood. You know, it's fun. I went to have a pedicure today. I never do that. You know, so I guess I've gone Hollywood. That's Cindy on the phone, by the way. But she's leaving me a message telling me she'll be home very soon.
Oh, cute. Well, Gary, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sewing into our book clubs. Thank you for sewing into my life and all of our lives, and just for your great, great contribution. And this was very, very enjoyable. I can't wait to watch the recording. And let's end the call by everybody saying, thank you, Gary. Good night and God bless.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Gary.
Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Good night and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Good night and God bless.
Thank you. We'll see you.
You want